Okay, for our activity today, we are going to need some counters of some kind, either some coins, some blocks. I have cotton rounds, so you're going to need at least 24 counters. You're also going to need something to show equal groups of those counters. I'm using pencils. You can use straws, colored pencils, markers, whatever you want to get. You're going to need at least 6 of those. So if you want to pause this video while you go and grab your stuff, I'm going to play some music in the background for a minute just to have a little bit of fun on Monday. All right, so once you get those counters, you're going to need to put them kind of to the side, and you're going to need to grab 6 of them out. So I've got my 6 counters here. I'm just about ready to go. All right, so you need 6 counters in front of you, and we're going to start off multiplying whole numbers by a fraction. So the best way to visualize this, or actually see what's going on when you're multiplying a fraction times a whole number, is to go ahead and use counters and use those in order to show what's really going on behind the numbers. All right, so we've got 1/3 of 6. So we need to have the counters in equal groups. So I know with 6, I can put them in groups of 3. So I've got 3 in this group and 3 in this, 3 and 3. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to split them up into 3 equal groups. So I've got one group here, I've got one group here, and I've got a 3rd group here. So I've got, right now I am showing them in 3 equal groups. So 1/3 of 6, or 1/3 times 6. Now these two statements mean exactly the same thing. So I'm looking at 1/3 of 6, or 1/3 times 6. So when I'm looking here, and I can show it right here on my picture too. So I'm showing 1/3, which is 1 right here, one group, 1/3 of the 6 is right here. So when I look and see how many counters, I've got 1, 2. I can show that 2 with my cotton rounds, 1, 2. So 1/3 of 6 is 2. 1/3 times 6 is the same thing, it's 2. All right, so now what if I wanted to show 2/3 of 6? What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to have both of these represented for 2/3. Sorry, my 2 looks like a 3. There we go. 2/3. So I've got this group and this group. So with my cotton rounds, it's this group and this group. So now I'm showing, with the cotton rounds and my picture, I've got 1, 2 in the 1/3 group, 3, 4 with 2/3. So 4 is 2/3 of 6, or 2/3 times 6 equals 4. All right, with the next one, if I wanted to do 3/3 of 6, well, what do I know when I have a numerator and denominator that are exactly the same? That equals 1 whole number. So I've got 1 here. Well, 1 times 6 equals 6, right? So let's check and see if the picture shows the same thing. Well, this is 1/3, this is 2/3. This whole thing here would be 3/3 of 6. So it would be all of the counters, So that would equal 6. So 3/3 of 6 equals 6. All right, so hopefully this is starting to make sense to you. This time we're going to need, and I'm going to take my dividers, and I'm going to need 12 cotton rounds. So I need 6 more, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, I'm going to bring problem number 2 down here. Problem number 2. So we need 12 cotton rounds. So we need to put them, because we're talking about fourths, we need to put them in rows of 4. So I've got 4, 8, 12. All right. Now, my denominator tells me how many groups I need to have. I need to have 4 equal groups. So I've got 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups. All right, let me put these off to the side here. Okay, so now I've got my cotton rounds. So now I can show that same thing here. So if I were to divide these just like my pencils are dividing, or dividing them up into groups, this is the way I would show it. I've got the 3 pencils showing the equal groups. I've got my 3 lines here showing the equal groups. Now I can easily see 1/4 of 12, or 1/4 times 12. So this would be, let's see, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. All right, so this part right here would be 1/4. So 1/4 of 12 would equal 1, 2, 3. 3. Or 1/4 times 12 equals 3. All right, so now if I wanted to show 2/4 of 12, well, wait a minute, 2/4, I know 2/4 is equivalent to something that is very common. This 2/4 is equivalent to half. So 2/4 of 12 is the same thing as saying half of 12. Well, I know what that is, but I want to check with my picture and see if it remains true with what I'm thinking. So if I put these 1/4, I've got 1 group of fourths, 2 groups 4/4. 2/4 would be 3, 6. 2/4 times 12 is 6. If I look down here at my cotton rounds, 1, 2, 3, that's 1/4. 4, 5, 6, that's 2/4. So that matches. Now I want to move on and do 3/4 of 12. So I've got 1/4 here, 2/4 here, 3/4 here. So this would be the 3rd fourth. So I've got to keep moving on with this. And I've got 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 3/4 of 12 is 9, or 3/4 times 12 equals 9. All right, 4/4 of 12. Well, again, I'm noticing that my numerator and denominator are exactly the same. And I know when the numerator and denominator are exactly the same, it equals 1. All right, so 1 times 12, I know is 12. So 1 of, the whole thing of 12 would be 12. So this would be, adding this on would get me my 4/4, and that would be the whole thing, or all 12 counters. Or down here, all 12 of my cotton rounds. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. All right, now we're going to move on to kind of a real world problem that would go along with this. So this time, I'm going to take my dividers here. I'm only going to need 8 counters. And this works out perfectly because 8, we can put 2 rows of 4. So that works out really nice. And we're putting them in fourths. All right, so I've got 1/4 of 8. So what I need to do, first of all, is I need to put them into equal groups. So I've got an equal group here, an equal group here, an equal group here, and an equal group here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw here. And I just used lines for my pencil dividers. So I notice that the first group, that's going to be the first group of fourths. So 1/4 would be 2 counters. 1/4 is shown right here. 1/4, 1, 2. 1/4 of 8 is 2. 1/4 times 8 is 2. All right. Now again, I have 2/4 of 8. Well, 2/4 of 8, I know 2/4 is equivalent to half. I know what half of 8 is, but I need to check with my picture. So 2/4, we've got 1/4 here, 2/4 here. That would include both of these. So we've got 2, 4. So let's take a look down here and make sure we're seeing the same thing with the counters. So we've got 1/4, which is 2, 2/4, which is 4. So 2/4 of 4, or 2/4 of 8, sorry, is 4. 2/4 times 8 is 4. Well, right away, I knew that half of 8 was 4. So I was just checking to make sure that I was seeing the same thing. All right, so here's 3/4. So 3/4 of 8 would be 2, 4, 6. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 2, 4, 6. So 3/4 of 8 is 6. 3/4 times 8 is 6. Now 4/4, remember, we saw that with the 12ths. 4/4 is a whole. So if we have a whole thing times 8, we've got 8. That's the same as saying 1 times 8 is 8. Let's check with our picture. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. All of them would equal 8. We can see the same thing with the cotton rounds. So if there was a teacher, say Mrs. Asper. Mrs. Asper has 8 apples. She wants to give 3/4 of the apples to her students. How many apples will her students get? Well, we can look at this information, and if she has 3/4 of the apples that she gives away out of 8, 3/4 of 8, she would be giving away 6 apples. So she would have 2 apples left. All right, so this time we're going to need all 24 counters, and we need to put them in groups of 6. All right, so while we're getting this together, we'll put some music on again, get those counters out. Takes a second to get these set up. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so I've got my counters all set up. So I've got my 24 counters, and I've got them in groups of 6. My denominator tells me to do that. So now I need to put them in equal groups. Split them into equal groups. I've got 1 equal group, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 equal groups. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and draw my lines that represent my pencils. All right, 1/6 of 24. Now, the real world problem that I have to go along with this is in a class of 24 students, 5/6 are boys. Holy cow, that's a lot of boys. How many boys are in the class? So we're going to use this to figure out if there are 5/6 of the class are boys, how many boys are in the class? We'll also be able to answer how many girls from this information. All right. 1/6 of 24. So remember, 1/6 of 24, we can take of, and remember we talked about this also in story problems. We can put the multiplication symbol in the place. So 1/6 times 24. So 1/6 would be right here. 1/6 of the set. So 1/6 of the set would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And we see that also with the counters. 1/6 would be 4. So 1/6 of 24 is 4. So 2/6 of 24. So 2/6 would be right here. That would be the first 2 groups. So 2 6 would be 4 8. All right, 3 6ths. Well, what do we know about 3 6ths? 3 6ths is equivalent to half. 3 6ths, this right here would be 3 6ths. 1, 2, 3, this would be 3 6ths. So 4, 8, 12, and we know that 12 is half of 24. Remember, we can replace these with multiplication symbols. All right, 4 6ths. Well, 4 6ths would be right here. It would be all of these groups to right here. So we know that this was 12. We add 4 more in there, and we've got 16. We look down here, 1 6th, 2 6ths, 3 6ths, 4 6ths. That would be 4, 8, 12, 16, counting by fours. All right, 5 6ths. Now that's going to give us the answer to the problem I asked you. If there were 5 6ths of the class that were boys. So we've got 5 6ths. That would be 4 more. All right, so that would be 20. 20 boys in the class. Holy cow. So then how many girls would be in the class? So there would be 1 6th of the class would be girls. So we would go back up here to take a look, and 1 6th times 24 equals 4. So there would be 20 boys and only 4 girls. So we're going to keep practicing this again tomorrow. And what I want you to do, on the web page right below where you clicked on this link, I have a few more problems for you to try with your counters. And I want to see if you can try those and figure those out with the counters, and bring those results back for tomorrow. We'll go over those, and then we'll go over a few other things before I ask you to try something on your own. Tomorrow that paper will not be for a grade, but it will be for you to try on your own and practice to make sure that you're understanding. Remember, if you ever don't understand something, you can always email me. Remember, keep learning, stay curious, keep watching, and come back tomorrow. See you tomorrow.